Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for joining this next episode of In a Nick of Time. We're going to get started in about 10 minutes now with Robby Ann joining us. We're going to be talking about how to finally break DoD policies. So stay tuned for another 8 minutes. We'll get started. Happy New Year. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for joining this next episode of In a Nick of Time with Robby Ann today, joining us to break duty policies. Stay tuned. We're going to get started in about 5 minutes. In the meantime, if you want to share you are here today, put your name in the comment section so we can highlight you on the screen. And also, if you've not subscribed to the show yet, go to inanicoftime.tv and subscribe. We have a couple of great things coming up this month. First, you're going to see our new chat bot using GPT, indexing all of the DoD policies, the fall, the default, and all the DoD bios and a bunch of different technical things to be able to query the bot and get feedback on DoD things. So that's going to come in the next couple of weeks. And also, you'll see a new mobile app for In the Nick of Time coming up in the next couple of months. So stay tuned. In the meantime, uh, please make sure you subscribe so we can notify you for the next episodes. And you'll get the link also of the chat bot so you can play with it and get us feedback if you have content you think we should index in the bot for the bot to become smarter with DoD nonsense. Just let us know. We'll be able to do that for you. Thanks so much. Stay tuned. 5 minutes. Happy New Year, everybody. Thanks so much for joining this next episode of In a Nick of Time. The first episode of the year 2023. It's going to be a great year. I can see it coming. I don't know about you guys, but it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be able to have a lot of great guests. So if you have names, by the way, of people you think should come on the show, please reach out to us on LinkedIn so we can invite them. We're booked pretty much until March, but will be great to get the next 3 months going. So send us some names. Today we have a great guest. Robby Ann will join us to talk about how to break DoD policy. It's going to be a lot of fun. She helped us tremendously, at least on a lot of different engagements when it comes to the cloud native access point, when it comes to all the work we've done with Platform One. So she's a great asset to the nation. So we're pretty excited to have her today join us. But before we get started, I want to remind everybody to subscribe to the show. Go to inanicofftime.tv and put your email so we can notify you about the next episode and videos we publish every week. You'll see also, of course, the Learn with Nick content up now. Go try it out. We have two coupon codes, military with 50% off for military veterans and civilians, and then Let's Beat China for everybody else. So go check that out. A lot of content there for you to discover with one new every week. You can see our latest video on SQL injections here. We have a lot of content coming up in the next couple of weeks, and you'll see also a couple of announcements. First, we're building a DoD/US government version of the Chat GPT bot from OpenAI. So you'll see we have ingested a tremendous amount of content coming from different regulation documents, publications, policies. That includes the federal acquisition regulations, the defaults, and all the bios and content and policies that are publicly available. But we're also going to bring open source intelligence, and that's going to be pretty interesting to see how the bot will be able to summarize and understand what's going on with all the content that we ingest every day. And also, of course, it's going to be able to do all the other features, including coding and answering questions, including tracking who is doing what and when. We're going to be ingesting all the RFPs and bids, so it's going to be a lot of great information for you to consume. So if you want to be part of that, let us know and shoot us a note on LinkedIn. We can also ingest your content. So if you have a company and let's say you have a product with documentations and you want the bot to be able to answer questions about your product and what it does, maybe it's an API documentation, maybe it's just a documentation. We can ingest that and have the bot be able to be aware of what's going on with your products. So shoot us a note. It's going to be a lot of fun. Also, as you can see here, you'll see that we have launched the store in the nick of time a couple of months ago. For the rest of the quarter, all the profits are going to the Fisher House, and then we're all going to pick another nonprofit. So if you want to have some fun T-shirts or goodies, some are pretty funny. Go check it out, and of course you can gift it to your friends. And all the profits, 100% of the profits, not just a piece, 100% of the profits go to the Fisher House. So please check it out. And if you have not seen it yet, we have this Cloud Native Town metaverse on Gather. You go on cloudnative.town on laptop or desktop, no mobile. You'll be able to see all the videos, all the content, all the people that help us make all this content great. So check it out. You'll see different rooms about different topics, different themes. So give us feedback on what to add, what to focus on next in terms of content. Okay. Now we have Robby Ann Carter joining us. So excited to have her. I'm not gonna do a great job at describing all she's done because she's exceptional. Right now, at least, she's a CEO and owner of Special Aerospace Security Service (SASSI). It's a woman-owned small business located in Virginia. She's also a senior consultant advisor to DoD and other government executives. She has been an independent security consultant for the past 18 years. She's a subject matter in information assurance, cybersecurity, and she's helped, of course, the Office of OSD, DoD CIO, NSA, and the Army C5ISL, CSSP program. We'll talk about some of that work that she's been doing with the next generation defense cyber operation program. She's also a great partner to coordinate with different U.S. and NATO partners, universities. She's has obviously a very broad background. You'll see that first serving 10 years as a CIA security officer, and then serving as an on-site educator for polygraphs. She provided armed support for U.S. government personnel, domestic and overseas securing facility construction. And she has 3 years as a unit chief for the FBI. So she's literally touched every piece of the government that matters for our national security. So with that, let's welcome. And by the way, you'll find her on the link here on LinkedIn /Robby Ann. So check that out and follow her now. With that, welcome. So excited to have you. How have you been?
Thank you, Nick. Happy New Year to you and your family. It's really an honor and a blessing to re-engage with you again. And for everybody out there, I'm unlike Nick. I'm a Grits. I'm a girl raised in the South. So I graduated from Appalachian State University in North Carolina, where I obtained a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice and a minor in psychology. How I progressed to now cybersecurity being my world. I'll talk a little bit about that in my journey. So as Nick mentioned, I kind of cut my teeth in CIA. I started off in federal law enforcement. I thought that was going to be my dream. I turned out to be a good shot. I was athletic. So I was asked to join the first protective operations cadre in CIA. So I was the first female years and years ago. Where we protected our very important personnel overseas and domestic, and even supported dear Robert Gates on details. So had a lot of fun for 10 years and touched every core discipline of security that you can imagine. So it was a really good foundation for progressing into what is now cybersecurity. When I was there, IT was not a big thing. We still had Delta Datas and Wang terminals. So it was when I left CIA, I spent the next few years in private industry. And I worked with Boeing for a few years, where I was working with some S&T experts from CIA, NSA, DIA, and other DoD components, focused on special science and technology programs. And there I learned how to tear computers down and put them back together again. And that really intrigued me. It allowed me to, again, implement some of the core basic security, core discipline activities and experience that I had. So I did that for a few years, and then 9/11 happened, and also Robert Hansen was a spy that affected the FBI, and I was asked to come back into federal service as an FBI unit chief downtown DC. And going in as a GS-15, I had, under Dean Hall, I had to do some, ramp up some really progressive cybersecurity information assurance programs that didn't exist. At the time, it was an organization that only supported a secret network. So I created the first secure wireless and mobile computing program, which I'll talk to you a little bit about hockey puck later, but it's really getting to make a device that it's nothing more than a galvanized piece of rubber. I don't care about it. It can be lost or stolen. And you can imagine FBI agents and others out there with those types of devices with data at rest being new. I took that on and some other training, get them to TSSCI networks and other fun things over the course of 3 years. I didn't want to choose the path of an SES. So I left for an opportunity to consult and help out a company with digital hospitals. And I did that for about a year or so. And then the VA laptop was lost. I don't know if you read the papers back then, but Pedro Cardozo was the CIO at the VA, and he was fired. And that turned every CIO's sphincter to tighten up when the loss of the VA laptop happened. Bob Lentz, the DASD for NII at DoD, at the time, recognized the program that I had spun up at the FBI for mobile and wireless computing that included data at rest, and he needed to solve that problem for the department. So that's where I really got into policy, other than advising, like in for ICD 503, RMF, et cetera. I was able to drive the DoD CIO to a data at rest encryption program with policy, source selection with requirements and products made available across the DoD in 6 months. And Will Alberts, my buddy out there, helped me achieve that success and gave success to the department. And I progressed to help with endpoint security. You'll hear me talk about that, and secure host baseline, which may be familiar to many of you. I spent a lot of my time in the DIAP, the Defense Information Assurance Program, which doesn't exist anymore, but it was a consortium that we partnered with NSA, which had the gig portfolio back then, to really get after the governance, policy, and oversight of information assurance across the DoD. And back then, NSA was a big informant for us, advising us in our success for policy. Now I'm into all things cloud, still advising to the DoD CIO in cybersecurity. I've gone from anything from PKI, 8530, RMF, mobility, endpoint security, and now I'm all things cloud. So I'm helping with our cybersecurity reference architecture, exceptions to policy, as Nick mentioned. CNAP was one of the big ones. And for the past 3 years, my buddy Bill Raiders and I, who cut teeth with me in the CIA, we embarked on this journey as a woman-owned small business, SASSI. We've diversified the company. It was a small training company when we bought it. And so now we're really growing low and slow, I guess, in a national security arena that is challenged by the pandemic and other issues. But we're successfully embracing some much needed effect in cybersecurity in the growth of the company. So that's kind of my journey. As we go through each of the questions that Nick has for me, we'll talk a little bit about my experience and why it led to my responses to these questions. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, so excited to have you. Obviously, you're an underachiever. You've not done enough. It's kind of impressive. Obviously, touching every piece of the puzzle here, and your learning growth is very exciting because people have a tough time reinventing themselves along the way, and you've done only that your whole life. So that's going to be interesting for the viewers to understand how you've done it and what you've seen, and kind of back to your journey. It's interesting to me, since I only know the DoD of what, 4 years, right? I have no background of DoD before that, so for me it was pretty bad when I met it, but I'm sure we had tremendous progress in the last 18 years. So what have you seen change since you started?
Oh, absolutely. I don't even know if you knew gig was a word. And it's not a stand up comedian gig, it's the Global Information Grid. And so when I started consulting in DoD 18 years ago, that's where we were, the Global Information Grid. Then we progressed to the Joint Information Environment, JIE. And now we're into cloud, and we're leaning into digital and software modernization and zero trust, and kind of leaning into those strategies across the department. So that was a big shift in how we looked at networking, and now this data-centric environment that we live in today. Another big change is cloud came about. When I started my career, we didn't even have smartphones and cloud and internet and things like that. So now we're in this ubiquitous, expansive, agile world. Going from embracing what can be provisioned for us by these cloud service providers versus all the expense and coordination and effort that went into sustaining networks for ourselves in DoD. So now, the NIPRNet and SIPRNet are infused into cloud hosted, unclassified and classified fabrics. So that's an enormous capacity to deliver us compute and store capability, capacity for a variety of services and solutions that we can now embrace and get there in a more agile and faster manner. We also have, which is new since we've gone to cloud in the beginning, is having a multitude of cloud brokers in the department, making easing our pain into progressing into the cloud by having someone, kind of help and provide managed services, in which you were very key to that, Nick, in what Cloud One and Platform One did at the Air Force. And I was very fortunate enough to learn right when you started, learn from you over the last 4 years. We had an organization I mentioned earlier, the Defensive Information Assurance Program. And it was, again, folks from all the services, experts in the field of cybersecurity information assurance, all living together with a contractor support team of 35 to 50 people over time. That really gave the lend itself to governance and driving and developing and coordinating policy for the department. And we had the gig portfolio management office and things like the enterprise solutions steering group that really took hold of informing the DoD, how do we do information assurance and progress into what we now call cybersecurity. DIAP and GIAP are gone. So now we have things like the ISRMC. We're looking at NSM-8, what NSA is advising us to do. We have FedRAMP, which is a new policy infrastructure to support how we authorize and use secure cloud. We have our Information Security Risk Management Council, the ISRMC, and we have things that don't quite fit, like the Cloud Native Access Point. When we consider policy today says you must use a boundary cloud access point provision by DISA, the Cloud Native Access Point and an alternative access point that allows you to enter into cloud without going through the DISN, the core of the DoD networks. Some of those things lead to exceptions to policy. So I really focus on those and try to identify across the department where are there common exceptions to policy and use cases, and then try to formulate those in to policy. So this is all just ever changing as we're evolving and have more things available to us. Also changes in people and the way they run the DoD CIO, for example, in cybersecurity. I had icons. Now we have a diverse set of icons to me personally. But I had the Honorable John Grimes and Bob Lentz and Richard Hale and Bill Keeley. NSA, we had some phenomenal experts in Rich Scalco, Don Heckman, Marianne Bailey. And so to me, it gave me, I advised to all of them, and I was able to orchestrate momentum behind driving change in the department. And now I don't personally feel that I have people where I can grab as a SME and say, let's huddle up in a room and really make change for the department. So I know you had your experiences in Air Force and trying to progress those changes in the DoD, but I'll continue to fight the fight with you as well, Nick. So those are the
Yeah.
big key items I've seen change over the last 18 years.
Well, that's definitely a lot, and it's interesting how you see some key people like the people you mentioned that were able to bring their insights and kind of disrupt the status quo, right? But at the same time, I guess back to my next point of my question is what do you feel like has been stuck and should not be stuck in the last 18 years? Do you feel like that we're still struggling in some key pieces of the policy structure of the department? What could we focus on if you have a top three items there?
Oh, absolutely. Great question. And this is in my opinion. This is in Robby Ann's opinion, of course. But I'm coming with 18 years of experience, still living with HBSS and ACAS. So endpoint security has been something that makes me grind my teeth at night, that we can't get to a modernized approach. Again, we're still have policy and folks out there who have installed host-based security, which is evolved to ESS. We have ACAS, which Tenable has evolved in their solution set for vulnerability management. We have
Yeah, it's kind of
Tenium
the
and
stuck in time version of these products, right? And we will obviously do a deep dive on endpoint protection because I think that's such an essential piece of the puzzle. What's the next two, I guess, that you got?
yeah, sure. The SRGs, the STIGs, and also the
Yeah.
fact that it's taking us decades to update any cybersecurity policies. We
What do you
don't.
think that is? That's always interesting to me. The Cloud SRG specifically is so important and has been stuck in time. I mean, there was little minor updates, but nothing like. I mean, my take was we needed a almost a complete rewrite, particularly with the move to zero trust. The whole document was designed on the perimeter defense model. So why do you think it's so difficult to update these policies, or should they
Yeah,
even exist if we can update them? I guess.
exactly. You're going to hit right on my point. Is that we are in a culture that can't seem to get out of their own way. And with respect to policy, our trend or in our culture is to take an existing policy and try to update it, and that's just not the way to go. They're like they're Bibles in and of themselves. I can't go across any series of policies, whether they be 6,500 or 8,500, or even looking at what the ICDs in the intelligence community have done, or NIST, and pull a thread of common things that really pinpoint and give the operational community a policy they can pick up and say, this is how I address something, whether it be endpoint security or cloud security, and one single point of reference. And so we go back and we update all of these legacy 8530 for DoD, Defensive Cyberspace Operations, is the same document from, I know, at least 18 years ago, and I know more, that we just continuously update. The SRGs and the STIGs, we've done STIGs forever, but that's when we had a handful of security tools and
Right.
services made available to us, right? And now we have to rely on the vendor to draft those. Just tell me how to secure it and sustain that technical implementation guidance. Um,
And
excuse
it's
me,
very
requires.
painful for the vendors and expensive and slow and you find many vendors don't have the time to do it. People that do it all the time, obviously they have a leg up, and there's some level of automation. I know Red Hat, for example, has built a lot of internal automation, but yeah, the DISA team was always pushing back on me when I was pushing for automating some of their work on their side, particularly when it comes to creating some type of automated profiles that could also bring some infrastructure as code. And I know that DISA team recently has done a great job at creating some of these configuration as code and infrastructure as code documents. That's kind of the future, right? Why do we still need
Absolutely.
to tell people what the STIG should be about when you can just give them, the actual results that they need to run as a container, the the piece of software. It's just so much easier, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that is the way we need to go. Configuration is code. We can create capabilities for these vendors to go in. I went through the experience for the last several years with Secure Host Baseline, going out physically to Microsoft every 6 months as they continue to update Windows 10, Windows 11. And so with every build that they released in 6 months, brought on new capability and services, and we could never keep up with the STIG. We would fall behind in having that integratable with our other endpoint security capabilities. So to me, SRGs are really where we need to set the bar, a security requirement guide for a
Right.
particular capability or suite of capabilities. That guide then trickles out to any applicable secure configuration within that family of capabilities, tools, and services. But we don't do it. We don't do it that way. So I'm with you. Let's try to get to a means of automation and allow the vendor or make it easy for them to give us those secure configurations on a continuous basis. Um,
Right, and that's the key piece, right? The continuous piece there that you mentioned, right? Because stuck in time is actually as bad as not having it sometimes, and it was sometimes even worse. When you look at some of the legacy STIGs, you see teams. That's where I remember when we tried to do the container documentation. People were pushing for installing, the CAC authentication libraries into the container because they were just not able to understand that, hey, this is a container that's short-lived where no human actually connects to. And yes, it's running Linux, but we don't need CAC authentication on this, because guess what? There's no human connecting to it, right? And so all these kind of default settings that were supposed to be designed to be secure actually now add complexity and attack surface on the containers, which effectively create more risks. And the keeping up with the pace of relevance and the number of products we have to deal with, that's where it becomes tricky. And that's where I think the Iron Bank team has done a decent job at hardening and centralizing the scanning and assessment and hardening of some of these products. That could be a great, my thought was always like, hey, DISA should be taking this over, and assuming they would keep keep doing a good job at running it, but that should really be kind of their model, right? Instead of just writing stale policies and documentation, they should come with tangible answers. But back to your point, also on the policy side, you look at the Cloud SRG, right? We had to go and get a waiver for the cloud native access point for zero trust. There was a publication for CNAP, so it is a publication. I don't believe that the Cloud SRG was updated to point to it to say that's a valid use case. So you would still, I believe, require a waiver, an exception to policy waiver to use something like the CNAP. And yet, the department is moving to zero trust and pushing that zero trust, the policy enforcement point mentality and concept. So they are literally fighting between each other, outcomes. So at some point, the question is, do we need to have policies that are stuck in time? And my take, when I wrote policies, I realize now that we still don't have an Air Force and Space Force CSO, and most of the publications have been stuck in time since I left. I wonder if I should have written them, because now it becomes kind of this stale, confusing um, policy that could actually become a part of the problem.
Yeah, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later on how we carve that path for CNAP and trying to make it policy, right? Get it into the
Right.
SRG. But a third thing that I thought of that has not changed is RMF, risk management framework.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a two-step process. It's really more than that. And so we're stuck in time with two things: assess, certify, and authorize. That's
Right.
it, and everything that goes into that. And so the relevance now is we got to start with step one. How much do you care about your data? And I'll talk more about that. But it's really all about the data now. But we're stuck in a network centric risk
Yeah.
management framework,
Perimeter. Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And now we have to have things where the software, whether we buy it, we deliver it, it's in those pipelines. It's getting assessed and vetted and debugged and gets to a healthy state where you created the certificate to field, right? It's ready to
Yep.
go, and we're going to continuously assess, test, and monitor that throughout its life cycle. That's where we need to get. We need to
Yeah,
focus
the
on that.
continuous piece, and the other
Yeah.
piece is of course the modularity, right? If you look at all the EMAS management capabilities, it's always designed as a system, right? And a holistic system. It's not designed for microservices. It's not designed for reuse of code and modularity. When we know 70% of software is open source, and whether we know it or not, by the way, and whether we recognize it or not, is still a fact, even coming from the defense industrial based components. And so how do we assess those centrally instead of reinventing the wheel and having every team reassess the same freaking versions of CAC authentication bits and all these kind of Lego blocks pieces that could be centralized, right?
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
that just doesn't scale. And we have a talent problem, right? You have not talked about talent, but I'm not gonna lie, I've been a little bit concerned. I mean, we have obviously Rob Widmeyer and other great people in the DoD SEO shop. We have Lauren, the Air Force CIO, Aaron Weiss, the Navy CIO. But there's a lot of people that have left that used to be in meetings with me, really pushing the change.
Yep.
Of course, unfortunately, the what I call the legacy people that want to be stuck in time are still very much there. And but the people that we're trying to disrupt this are now out of the building. So I'm a little bit worried about who is still, holding the torch, and other than people like you, obviously. But as a contractor, there is so much you can do, right? We need government people to do this, and we're running out of them.
Absolutely agree, and they have to be disruptive, willing to take risk, and pull
Right.
the thread is something I use. Is if you're going to sink your teeth into something to make change, then pull the thread. If you're a leader, don't stop and leave it to
Don't stop
somebody
in the
else,
middle.
get it kick started, and then walk away. See it through, and that's where
Right.
my prior leadership, they didn't let things go until it was rocking, right? So
Yeah.
that's where we need to get. We have stovepipes of excellence, and not a crowdsource of, let's get the momentum, let's have a spearhead, a leader that will ensure our success in at least one area, right?
Right.
Much less
And we,
the
we still
multiple
put
things.
people in charge of things that really they have no background in, right? And so that's a problem, right?
Yep.
I know, even I mean, they were trying to do the best they could do, but we had a lot of material leader in the Air Force, right, running programs like the cloud ones, the platform ones, and others. And not just saying people, the current people, but people in the past too, right? Um, they had a tough time, right? Because they had no background in cloud. It's almost like, if you would see Google hiring, to be the head of Google Cloud, someone that never even built a cloud in their basement. You would probably not see that, right? That would be pretty
Right.
bad. But yeah, we
Yeah.
do that, right? It's like, I guess in military particularly, you see because I guess there's this mentality of like, touching a little bit of everything, and you're just managing, so it doesn't really matter how much you know about the subject matter. That can fly sometimes, but in tech and in other fields too, right? If you don't have the subject matter, then what you end up doing is, what you see is a lot of RFIs and questions, and people asking a lot of questions, never making decisions. You look at ITAS, right? The Air Force network as a service program. For the first 2 years, they did a bunch of pilots and little things, and you know trying things out, a million of them, not just one or two. I'm talking like whatever could stick, they tried it, right? But honestly, the answer was right in front of them for people that actually had the expertise to do this job. And when I showed up, I'm like, and people like Jay Bonchi is perfect for this kind of job, right? Is the best, the new Air Force CTO. But you know until he came in, they had no guidance, and so all they did was doing a bunch of pilots, because no one is willing to make a decision because they actually don't know the answers. But some of these answers, honestly, are pretty basic in IT, right? It's not rocket science in 20, back in 2019, to look at network as a service and EIT, right? And all that stuff really was the foundation of any business out in the commercial side. But yet, we had to do a bunch of 2-year pilots. Um, and that instead of actually delivering the same capability in the same time, I would have been able to deliver in the same 2 years an actual production ready Air Force wide network as a service stack for the same amount of money that we just wasted through testing different things. And I don't blame the people, they just don't know any better, but I blame the leadership for appointing them to a job that they just don't have the expertise in, right?
Yeah, I call it a concept of a tail wagging the dog, right? If the government doesn't know what they don't know, then the vendors are going to say, "Hey, this is the thing." Oh, with zero trust, we'll tell you what it is, and you'll try it and say, "Does it whet your appetite? Does it scratch your itch?" And it may still be unknown to that leader if they're doing the right thing, right? So we have a tendency in the department to not have the right skill for the right mission that we're trying to achieve. So I agree with you 100% on that.
And you look at some of the work being done now by Randy's team, from the DoD CAO shop for the Zero Trust team. Randy came from the IC, obviously, so the IC people get stuff done. I've seen a massive difference, by the way, between the DoD side and the IC side in terms of like data centricity, zero trust, cloud. I mean, we were we were stuck on using their cloud contract for years because the DoD couldn't figure out how to do Jedi, which honestly, could have been a multi-world contract from the get go, and be done in a year. But yeah, we got stuck, 5 year with legal nonsense, which everybody knew what the answer was until John Sherman finally came in and say, you know what, we're just going to do this multi-world JWCC, and it took a little bit longer than I would hope, but it did it right. Now, of course, you had to add services on top. There's vendor lock-in issues. One of the feedback I gave Randy when it comes to zero trust, for example, was the fact that the zero trust stack cannot just be designed per cloud provider. He was asking each of the Microsoft and the Google and the Amazon of the world to design a zero trust architecture for their clouds that would meet all of these pillars and capabilities requirements. But then I told him, you can't just federate policy enforcement point and think you have a zero trust stack. So if you let everybody do things in a vacuum and with their own secret sauce and vendor lock-in solutions, you're not going to have a cohesive zero trust stack. And so having a what we build with a CNAP, which is effectively a cloud agnostic zero trust capability, is essential for the department. But yet no one even had really thought of doing this kind of abstracted enterprise stack. That tells you. I mean, they still got a lot of stuff done. So I'm very excited with what they've done. But that's where we need people that really see beyond just the, hey, we're going to use the vendor to do the work and do the architecture design. We need people in the government. When I kept hearing the Air Force say we don't have enough airmen coders, I'm like, no, that's not true. We don't have enough airmen architects, right, to design and scope the work and define the actual technical down in the weeds requirement, right? We don't see a lot of that.
Yeah, and I think you and I are of the same opinion that DoD is, and other agencies are this way. They're afraid to embrace something that somebody else has already done. So you mentioned the IC and how they aggressively went to cloud, and they learned a lot of lessons, right? They went to AWS, they learned from it, and immediately shifted to a multi-cloud, contract, making that available. We should have embraced it. I would talk to leadership and say, why don't we do what they're doing, and ride that
Yeah,
bandwagon? Why can't we,
yeah.
push money to them and go to this? We're all going to the same cloud at the end of the day. And
It's the
by the
same. That's
way,
what
the
people don't
IC is
understand. It's just a
foundationally
contract vehicle,
authorized.
right?
The
Exactly. It's
IC
just so
foundationally
funny.
authorized them all. So
I
why
know
are
it's just
we trying to
ridiculous.
reinvent the wheel? So I think
I
that's
never understood these and I guess then you become part of the problem too, because then you get swallowed by this kind of fights between the services too, right? There was a post yesterday by the Army saying that they're the first one to apply for a continuous ATO with the DoD CIO. I'm like, yeah, I mean, you can phrase it that way, but the Air Force did 3 years ago and actually wrote the stuff to give it to the CIO to publish the actual stuff. Now you can pretend that you're applying for it and you're going to be the first one, but it's just widely misleading, right? I mean, you've been there with me when we wrote this stuff. I mean, it's just
oh
ridiculous
yeah.
to make a statement like this, right? But that's what people do, right? It's and then I have to be the idiot, answering and adding fuel to the fire by saying, well, that's not true because the Air Force did it first. And don't we forget sometimes it should be the U.S. versus China instead of the Air Force versus the Army.
Absolutely, absolutely. Somebody's got to blaze the trail. But again, ride the wave. Don't tout that you're doing something different or something new. If what you're really doing is endorsing and codifying the relevance and the importance of continuous authorization, right?
Right.
So get in there and get everybody else. That's one of the biggest things I do for the department, other organizations. If I see a good use case, if I see something good that is effective and productive and gets at the heart of what we're trying to achieve, you did so many of those disruptive, leading edge, forward leaning efforts that I'm like, that's where we need to go. Now you're over here asking for doing something like a CNAP, an alternative access point, or you and I worked on, how do we work with cross domain services? You built a security stack in there. Don't try to go off and do your own thing. And you were generous to share the reference designs. Here's your solutions design. Go off and do the same versus trying to, do your own thing. Saves us all,
And even
money.
sharing code, right, was for us. We thought, hey, you wanna reuse the stuff instead of actually just taking the reference design and rebuild the stuff and pay a company to go and rewrite the same freaking code. here's the code, go run with it, and oh please, merge requests and share with us back what you learn and what you improve, so we can be stronger and faster together instead of building stuff in a vacuum.
Yep.
So,
Spot on.
you talked about, the first topic, which I think, we obviously hear a lot about, which is kind of endpoint, both, security slash user experience, right? There was this big article by Michael from the Air Force, who wrote about, let's fix my computer, complaining of the time it takes, right, to start the computer or connect to the VPN, blah blah blah. A piece of the issue there is, of course, compounded by what you were describing, which was, the HBSS ACAS nightmare. In this use case, on top of that, the Air Force kind of fought, never agreed and conquered with DoD and this, and I don't know, probably Cyber Command, and they had their own endpoint protection on top of Tanium and other things. So now you have two endpoint protection solutions running on the same device, which is really a recipe for disaster, because they're gonna fight each other the whole time, and it already takes a bunch of memory, right? And by the way, one easy fix, you're gonna laugh, but one easy fix that Lauren did to fix the laptops of the Air Force was swapping the hard drive to solid state drives. That alone improve the performances by like 90%. So just swapping the hard drives was a massive win. You would think we would have SSD drives from the get-go, but whatever. But back to ACAS and HBS. So for people that don't know, right, ACAS is effectively kind of a legacy Nessus. All contracts, I don't know, probably 15 years old, I don't know. And someone was talking about HBSS here. Tom was mentioning HBSS awarded 17 years ago, 2 years to do the RFP, 2 years to do the requirements, so 21 years. Which is a lifetime. If you think back what technology was 21 years ago, right? And so that's McAfee, right? On the endpoint. So why, and this was supposed to obviously, and there was, I was part of these meetings. You go to those too, I think, but those kumbaya meetings with all the services and talking about all the big IT issues. But there was specific engagements about endpoints, and I was sitting there where they were fighting for 6 months on not just which endpoint protection to pick, but literally what criteria should we assess the endpoint protection on, to then maybe decide what we're going to pick one day. Maybe if we decide we actually agree on how to assess them first. And so there was like 6 months of just debate on the key things to assess, and of course they came up with like 500 of them, to compare between, the McAfee of the world, the Tanium, and whatever else. So is that part of the problem? And by the way, is it because the the enterprise is so big and there's so many cook in the kitchens that it's almost impossible? Shouldn't just OSD just pick one and tell the services to stop talking?
Yeah, we used to be that way. And Tom's a dear friend and buddy of mine. We've rode this wave together, right? And he's changed companies, and endpoint security has been a big thing. So thank you for that, Tom, the history. But it's leadership, and I've watched where DoD CIO said, we own it. We're going to develop the policy. We're going to define what you're going to put in place. DISA go out and procure. And that was back in the day when DISA was recognized as the enterprise service provider for some of these key endpoint security products. But now,
Right.
fast forward, McAfee, Tenable, looking at what they're doing and advancing their capability to focus on how do we protect endpoints in cloud, how do we protect virtual environments, and we failed to progress with them. So we're still using Policy Auditor from HBSS of 18 years ago. And so we didn't mature with them, but we stayed in a vendor lock that is essentially ineffective. It still has a purpose on our endpoint products that are still antiquated and fully loaded, full laptops, full desktops. Those tools and capabilities are still somewhat effective if you keep them up to pace and at pace with Microsoft and other vendors. So they all have to integrate. And the more endpoint security you put on an endpoint, the more difficult it's going to be, because those software products are agile as we are now. They're continuously progressing. And in my opinion, they're progressing in a manner that bakes security in for us. The old Windows 3.1 came with holes. It was for commercial. We had to put all these third-party products on something to solidify it and harden it to make it worthy of supporting DoD or government compute and store. Well, now they have a vested interest to protect our data in endpoints, whether they be in cloud or on-prem or virtualized. So I see that we're still in that kind of vendor lock. There's policy that still supports that vendor lock. Even cyber command orders. They'll say you can use alternatives. So I've seen in the real operational community, they will load the products that are required or mandated, but they don't turn them on or configure them. They put other stuff on top of that, right?
We
And so
pay the
you're just
license
now,
though. That's expensive, right?
yeah, the computer's
That's
just churning and burning, and you wonder why it takes you 20 minutes to boot up.
right.
And so there's also what I've seen, Nick, is the culture is stuck in time of being on-prem, and they have this fear of cloud. And you know me, my heart is on go zero client. Give
Right.
everyone what Dr. Stanley used to call a stupid box. Have no
Yeah.
OS, no apps, no data, and really progress with technology and software and afford the opportunities we have for enhanced and increased security for our endpoints and virtualized environments with those vendors. So that's me, men in black, stare at the pen. Let's do away with all of these legacy capabilities and really hone on the solid state drives. True zero clients. The department also has difficulty. I've been pitching Hockey Puck for which is a zero client hardware based VPN solution, CNAP solution to cloud. It's disruptive. I've been briefing it since 2017, 2018, that the solution is there. It's made available through your CNAP, however you want to use it. But it's so disruptive to take what they think is their stuff out of their hands and relying on it in cloud. So being stuck in that, we're also stuck in an era of software. When DoD decides to buy software, we take what we get and think that the responsibility is on us in the federal government to make sure it's secure. I want that onus to flip. And I saw Jen Easterly, she's out there touting, we need to really work with these vendors that they bake it in for us and they ensure that it's consistently evergreen and secure, maintains a secure configuration to protect the data at the level of that we require. And not put everything on us to figure out how we're going to button up everybody's holes. We just can't do it. And then the software that we deliver, you were right there with it. It was born through you that we create these pipelines, and so we're vetting the software, continuously improving, updating, rip and replace if it doesn't work or doesn't do what we need it to do. And we're doing that on such a rapid pace. Not only can STIG stay up, but the secure configuration for DoD to assess and authorize we just will not be able to keep pace. So I think
And
that's why we're kind of stuck.
do you find is maybe because of maybe lack of basic training of agility? I find people to think they know what agile is, but honestly, when you ask a few questions, they've never done it, and so they don't really understand it. I tried to build a lot of content on Learn with Nick to, for those guys to, and we put all the videos on YouTube, so they can even go watch it for free. But yeah, people don't get it. Is that kind of the foundation of evolution? If they don't know how to innovate, you can't do anything, right? It's like this foundational step missing.
Yes, absolutely. With the speed of relevance, we hear that
Right.
touted all the time. We have to deliver at the speed of relevance to save the life, the warfighter, the communications, and we don't. We get, I think, from my own opinion in CIO, we get stuck on the governance, the compliance, right, and not really truly looking at what is the operational
Outcomes.
impact and
Yeah,
effect.
outcomes. Yeah. And that's always interesting, right? Because we spend so much time to write a policy, and then no one even is reading it or using it. versus an actual capability, and I think one of the biggest achievement I've made was the CNAP. I think P1 and all the other stuff is pretty cool, and in fact, CNAP could probably not exist without P1 and Cloud One. But the CNAP was, I remember when we started pushing the zero trust stuff. You were there. How many people told us to stop, and it was never going to work, right? People that say they've tried it for years and it was never going to happen, and I was wasting my time. But we did it, right? And we did it in 60 days,
Yep.
right? And so maybe part of the problem, and that's why I left too. I felt when you spend too much time in the same spot, in the same constraints, in the same bubble, you become part of the problem. If you get to leave and come back, I think it's pretty healthy to have this kind of fresh air and look at what else is happening, who is doing what elsewhere, right? And then come back. And I wish we could just send the Pentagon employees maybe 2 weeks, let's say a month, to SpaceX, right, and see how they come back.
That's a great idea. Yeah, we just don't have that cross fertilization like we used to have, the detailees, because that's where you really get it. That's where I brought what I learned in the intelligence community and NRO specifically. Before I went into the Bureau, was like extremely rudimentary to where the advances in NRO had escalated. Of course, they had tons of money, but the mission for the FBI changed after 9/11, and they became an intelligence organization. So we need to cross fertilize that talent, exposure, and you and I will talk about workforce. We need to bring the young people that are already doing it. It's their daily life to be agile,
Yeah.
and bring that disruption to us. And I'm getting old myself, but it's time for some folks that it's native. It's how they operate, how they function, they code, they're agile, they're quick, they're incentivized. We have to do a better job at incentivizing them. But they know how to game. I didn't come into this business knowing how to do gaming or anything like that.
But
So
you know what's interesting? I don't know if it's, I mean, obviously the younger, obviously they're gonna have those because that's all they knew. But I find, plenty of people with different age groups, as long as you're willing to learn and reinvent yourself. The issue in IT, right? The velocity of IT is such that if you don't know how to reinvent yourself, and look, with DoD, we're competing against China and Russia, but we don't really see the competition, right? Because one is overly classified, so we don't really know, at least the public doesn't really know what's going on or not in terms of, and by the way, we're not in an actual conflict to actually try it out, right? I almost wish, those games we do with the Army and Navy on football, I wish we would do something like that with actual real engagements with China, right? And then we can see, right, who is winning that, and then maybe people will wake up if it was an actual thing, and we actually see who is leading. Because right now we're like, yeah, we're competing, but are we competing? Are we really feeling the pressure, right? On the business side, if you don't, you go bankrupt, right? You can't get away with it for 30 years. In the DoD, until
absolutely.
there's a conflict, right? You get away with it until it happens, right?
Right. It has to go live in order for us to learn from it, right? Rather than, I like your analogy of a good Army Navy game. Put China, Russia, and U.S. in a room and give them a capture the flag scenario. And
Right.
how do we
I
each
wish
go
we could do
after it?
that. I actually really wish we could, because, by the way, I hate these Army Navy games. I understand the concept, but that creates also conflicts again between the services. So we keep losing track of who is the enemy here, right? And I mean, look, it's friendly, but sometimes it's not that friendly, anyways. But I just don't, I'm not a big fan of it. But I wish we had actually U.S. versus China, and see what happens, right? First in football, we'll kick their asses. That would be fun. And in cyber and other stuff that might not be as fun for the US. I don't know.
Some
But
soccer, yeah.
let's dig into, so we talk about it a little bit, right? The CNAP, we had to do an exception to policy. By the way, I believe the cloud native access point would not have existed without your help in getting this approved and go through all that nightmare of documentation. So I wanted to thank you for that, because that it opened the door to everything else, right? And we were the first real zero trust implementation in the department at scale, and we could have done it without you. But you talk about the policy. They did an update of the SRG right when I was leaving. It was I would say small, little things. It wasn't a big rewrite. People still get confused between impact level 2, 4, and 5, and where is the line. And now with CUI, there's a lot of different, things that come into play. Some people were pushing, for parity, obviously, between the gov clouds and the commercial clouds. Some people were even arguing that with modern cybersecurity, you could potentially use commercial regions and not even care about government regions. Some people were arguing that, with zero trust, you shouldn't care where things are hosted. In fact, the IC runs stuff on dirty networks all the time. So and they have mission partners all over the world, and we still can't figure out the mission partner environment, MP and MPCO, to enable what is the most important mission of the department, which is the SecRel 58 networks that we're supposed to flatten to help all the nations, NATO and non-NATO partners, to share and communicate with the US. So all this stuff, the Cloud SRG comes into play on everything. Is it a massive lift to rewrite this thing? How painful would that be?
It is getting it's soon to be released, but we'll go through some more iterations. So the challenge is when we did the first one, it was our first, and I grew up in the intelligence community, and we were very progressive when I've spent 18 years in DoD and see how slow things progress. But this is one opportunity where I think we should have partnered with the IC to create how do we want them to securely configure our stuff, because they go at the highest classification level that exist, right? They have to protect things that only 5 people or 2 people in the world are briefed on in the cloud. So if they have requirements to protect that data and coordinate it with these cyber cloud service provider vendors, with Amazon and Google and Microsoft, why can't we partner to get at the root cause, the root definition of what are the requirements that we want to levy on them, and we all benefit from it? But that's not where we are. DoD and DISA do SRGs and STIGs. It's a culture. It's what we've done for years. So they take the old SRG, which was very prescriptive. It didn't speak cloud. I learned as we were doing the cybersecurity reference architecture that we say, well, do you have this or do you do that? And a cloud service provider would say, what are you trying to do at the end of the day? And this is how we achieve it. And it would be terms that were new to us. In the folks that do these types of documents. And so we've had to get past learning how to speak cloud. There were concepts in there like the SCCA, which we didn't fully embrace. It was intended to protect the DISN, but really forced a lot of, in my opinion, components to build architecture that was duplicative of things that you already did in cloud or in platform one, the things we were doing with DCO.
It was already there, yeah.
Right. So we have to get away from thinking that DISA is everything, right? And we have alternative access points. They are also, when it was initially written, it was all scrambled for the cloud service provider and the mission owner, the user, who's really, who's this really for? And so now working with Tad over there, he's and Jackie and Roger, they are focused on creating one that is for the cloud service providers and one for the mission owners. As I observe this, one of the things is they also failed to address alternative access points. It was BCAPs and ICAPs. That was it, right? And internal caps just didn't really make sense. But now through the work that we did together for Cloud Native Access Point, getting it into the CSRA, which is leading into the next question, gets it into policy, gets it into the SRG. It may be slow, but at least we get it into policy that the components have something to default to, because policy trumps guidance. And so they have to wait on the policy to get the guide. So that's the path I'm carving specifically for alternative access points.
Yeah. So I guess you're saying they're working on this now, right? And they're going to do a new release that's going to be more meaningful than the last release we've seen. That's going to be a real change.
I won't say significant change. We had a backlog, and Rob Vietmeyer can attest to it as well. We had a significant backlog of changes we wanted to make, but a lot of them were just to shrink it down and make it less prescriptive. And if you're going to
Right.
be prescriptive to the cloud, you have FedRAMP, you have our added on provisional authorization stuff that we need to do. Hone in on that, make it direct to the cloud provider. What do you really want them to do above and beyond what they do today? And then one for the mission owners. If you're going to exercise cloud and you're going to configure some things to get to cloud or operate in cloud, this is what you need to focus on. I don't think you're going to see the next iteration get there, but we're all on the path to do it, to support it.
Right, right. That makes sense. So, well, that's good news. I mean, it might not be perfect, but and the other thing is maybe it should be incremental living documents. We had piloted this, you and I, when we started to do the publications, right? And we had the DSOG documents for all the DevSecOps stuff that were living and breathing document that would be updated almost continuously versus these kind of big releases every 5-10 years. You talk about the list of how you call it, backlog, right? Um, that is obviously a massive lift when you wait. It's just like agile, right? You wait and you release a bunch of changes versus small incremental delivery of new statements, I guess, in a document. So is anyone else still thinking of doing this kind of? I know we had created a repo and did a living and breathing document publication markdown and all that kind of stuff. Do you see people still thinking this way, or is back to normal and back to 5-year release cycles, I guess?
No, they're definitely working toward a 6-month release. The
Mm,
automation, the things like the repo that you did, they're not quite there, but we talk about it. We're
yeah,
asking to deliver that.
this
It's
should this
also,
should use that. It's just so much easier, right? It's
oh
just
yeah, and the SRG team, you only have less than a handful of experts who can actually focus on
right.
getting it right, right? And so that's a little detriment to DISA and trying to keep that that flow. But like you said, if we can automate it, give people a chance to spit at it, every day, and
Yeah.
somebody adjudicating those things, and
Merge requests. Yeah, all in
absolutely,
Git. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I know it's a little bit disruptive, but it's just I remember Dr. Smiley from MITRE was always like the best at doing all this stuff. He was
He's still
always
with
updating
us.
the
Yes,
stuff.
he's still helping
Still,
us
yeah,
fight this
good,
fight. Yes.
good. I gave his name to become the next Air Force CSO, so don't tell anybody. So it's secret. So all right. Maybe it's not secret
Newsflash.
anymore. Maybe it's not secret anymore. So here we go. We talk about the Cloud SRG. Now I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what you've been working on, and we try again to work with this, and we had proposed even back then to give them access to Platform One to do that work with you guys. And in fact, you had started, and then of course this leadership decided that they would spend money elsewhere, which was for me the most impactful this program that existed with a lot of that DCO work. I know there's still ongoing stuff, but the work you were specifically doing there back, what was it, 2 3 years ago, was a game changer for the department. So tell us maybe a little bit about first what the DCO is. Most people probably don't know what that is, and what are you up to on this now?
Absolutely. So historically, the department has had 20 plus disparately operating cloud cybersecurity service providers. Within consistent with DoD instruction 8530, there are 7 to 12 uh, functional requirements that the department has to achieve to protect the data and the networks within the DoD. And that work is divvied up across all of the department. Like I said, 23 disparately operating. And I recognized as we go to cloud, we might have a chance to fix this. So there were 3 prevalent CSSPs, DISA, NIWIC Atlantic, and Army C5ISR. And so Rob Mawini, we got together with the leaders from those CSSPs that were doing all functions to support that policy. We brought them together and created a working group. And I said, why can't we centralize this and make it available to any cyber defender? But we create a common platform that can be
Right.
leveraged in any cloud, and it's cookie cutter from a training perspective, from a tooling perspective, a management perspective. It's a same no matter what cloud or what classification domain. We got on board. We created a strategy that was signed out in 2020. JFHQ DoD came up with over 300 functional specification requirements. And what you spoke to, we took that and said, Mr. Vietmeyer said, hey, let's go try to do a pilot. So we initiated a pilot at DISA to get after a minimum viable product. And that's when I came to you, knowing how the speed of light you were working with Platform One. Love the CNAP, where I can have developers, developing right in the cloud from the cloud, and
Without
designing
having
and
to go on the
delivering.
DISN and
Yeah,
Nipper,
and I learned.
VPN to Nipper.
Yeah, I learned so much from you and your team, DevSecOps and pipelines and continuous delivery of capability that now, if I don't like a cybersecurity tool or capability, it's not performing the function I want, it's not as effective, I learned that I could swap that out. So why can't we centralize an environment where the CSPs are partnered, right? We now have an opportunity to leverage cloud native capabilities. So let's get together. Let's do it. DISA said, yeah, we'll support the pilot. Then it fell off. So I took that work over to SASSI's been the consistent thread in that. We took that work over to Army C5 ISR, where they've embraced it. We've implemented it into IL2, 4, 5, and 6, and soon to be TS. It's a what we call a legacy version because we needed to get some things in there quick. But our true goal is to develop and deliver it through a container-based infrastructure as code, where that management and support planes that consist of a DCO environment are repeatable, and it gives the department a place in which to operate and defend closest to the data, see it, kill it. And it's really transforming and shifting the paradigm for cyber defenders. They're not CSSP analysts looking at HBSS and flow logs and Nessus scans. They're actually leveraging the tools and the feeds, all the cybersecurity telemetry made available to them, creates an environment for them to develop and share analytics and get at what are the
It's cloud
questions.
native, right? And it's cloud native. So
Absolutely. So much is cloud native. We're just
it was
giving.
a lot of it was the legacy was on premise, right? So they had to push logs and push stuff back, and that was completely
Yeah,
inefficient.
we're blowing up stuff. We've learned over at Army that their initial support to cloud on their traditional on-prem CSSP services is blowing everything up. Right? We did the compute and store capacity is just not there, and we're getting telemetry like CloudWatch, CloudTrail, Sentinel that we never got before, and they're
Yeah.
bringing that backhauling, which is costly. And so we're constantly trying to improve the on-prem because we're not at the speed of light that I'd like to be to peer engineer and get DCOEs out there as rapidly as possible.
What's
So
the bottleneck that you see? I guess that makes you not being able to be. Is that the accreditation stuff? Is that the pipeline, the DevSecOps stuff? What is it?
no, and Danny Holtzman, a mutual friend, is he was willing to support this all the way up to IL6. Robbie,
Right.
bring it. I want to get rid of this backhauling.
Yeah.
You and he both, and so we still strive to do that technically. I don't see the ATO as always the long pole in the tent if you go through the old processes. But we had Danny, being progressive and seeing that we could escalate this as fast as we could through an authorization process. The problem is you still have disparity in how people are defending, protecting, and defending in the cloud. They're building little security stacks at the neck of their access point. They're
Right.
doing things in cloud. They're not leveraging the power of the cloud native capabilities and centralizing it in a common way. And
Right.
so the big ones like Cyber Command, DISA, need to get on board with the services and really fully enable this. So Mr. Vietmeyer's been a big advocate as well. Miss Metz, Daniel Metz was a big advocate, and Peter before he left the CIO shop. And so we have all the foundational things to do it: the strategy, the policy, and Rob Vietmeyer also had it added into the software modernization implementation plan that we're going to embark on here this year. So it's there. It's just, again, like you and I spoke, probably an hour ago, about getting strong leaders behind it and be a forcing function and truly pull the thread. We can deliver defensive cyberspace operations. We have experts in Kubernetes and Ansible and Terraform that are scattered across the department. What if you crowdsource that engineering
Right.
pool and get the energy behind it? Get a couple
Bring
of
it together.
ATOs or AOs, authorizing officials, that are progressive and say, what do we really need to make a risk determination here? Because DCO will be delivered incrementally, and it will be ever evolving and ever changing to stay ahead of the
Right.
adversary, right? So that's my opinion. I hope for it. I hope I can still try to drive and motivate us to achieve that over the next few years.
So I guess we talk about a lot of the bad stuff, and we did mention a few good things, right? So it wasn't too bad.
Yeah,
But
I see. We're really taking advantage of things like NSA and the DoD cybersecurity architecture review group led by NSA, DISA, and CIO. The DOD analysis, things that they do to threat inform not only our capabilities but our architectures. We're
right.
really starting to take advantage of that. So that's a positive, where we're kind of getting NSA back involved in informing how we do architecture.
So I guess more good stuff. Why I've been decently impressed, with Zero Trust. I mean, of course, I would always tell you I could have done more, faster, better, but I'm not in the building, so I can't say that anymore. Plus, I try to help, but sometimes people don't want the help. That's okay. But when you look at of the progress of the department as a whole with Zero Trust, what did you feel like there is real progress? How are we doing in Zero Trust? I guess.
Yeah, I think there's good progress. One thing was just getting the portfolio management and identifying ZT as a core function that
Yeah.
will be focused on in DoD CIO. And it's led by Randy Resnick and Colonel Gary Kipe. Great energy behind it, great smart, great talent.
Yep.
A lot of it is learning, what do we do today? And I'm of the opinion, forget how we used to do things, right? Really look
Right.
at what we have, apply zero trust principles, and now let's forge our way forward. And they're definitely getting there. The strategy is recognizing that. It was released to the public, so everybody in the world knows what we're trying to achieve. We can get to pony up and work that together. We have a series of synergy meetings with cybersecurity and information enterprise, focus on ZT,
Yeah.
and so in DAU we developed and delivered some training so we can get everyone in DoD. We're all in the fight together to achieve zero trust, and get it out to that human element. So you'll see courses free and made available to DoD and those with CACs to take advantage of zero trust training. And it's a mindset shift across, once we get everyone educated on what is truly zero trust. We can't rely on a vendor to tell us, because there's branding and different approaches they take, and they
Right.
throw tools in there. It's really a mindset that we focus on the data. I got my mom's chili recipe, or the three guys that know the Coca-Cola recipe. I don't want anyone to know about it. How do I care about, how much do I care about it? How available does it need to be? Where do I need to get it from? And when do I need to get it? We need to assume that somebody's already trying to get after it, or right at the gate, ready to wait for the weakness to get in to breach it. We trust no one. The zero trust principles that we invoked with CNAP and Hockey Puck are, if you have vendors that you're not there with them, watching where they're developing code and who they're sharing their code with, in the open internet or in the open cloud, now we can restrict them, that we can monitor, manage, and control where they operate, and how they deliver code to the department. And so you really need to think about the least privilege again, and only those who need access. But it also gets at our next topic is really the data centric, and how do you get folks to say, I want to protect my mom's chili recipe, not because my chili recipe is in the NIPRNet with mission data and operational data. it's all jumbled up with financial and PII. It's actually with all the other chili recipes, right? That give that same level of Kevlar or protection necessary to protect that data and leave it accessible to those who need access to it. And it challenges the bad guy. Right now, we give them a, open environment that we button up some perimeter. But when you really get down to it, if they get in there, they have access to way more than they ever should, because we don't micro segment or protect our data in a wrapped armor or Kevlar equivalent to the level of data that you're protecting.
Right. So I guess what do you think are we still missing when it comes to data centric, security? I guess the Air Force created this feed one and data one stack with a policy enforcement point to label data down to the cell level. Um, obviously that's a key piece of zero trust. Do you see a lot of engagements and people talking about the data centricity? Do they understand it?
Understanding is defined differently, I think, or understood differently across the department. We have a chief data officer, right? And I used to work eons ago on metadata tagging in the intelligence community, and they have incorporate tools in email that can easily delineate classified information. You have filters and so on, and they really focused on the data back then, over 20 years ago. We still have to get back to that, and it appeared to me as an opportune moment in time when we went to cloud to say, okay, NIPRNet is comprised of CUI, PII, health, finance, mission, personal, you name it, it's in there, right? Now we're going to forklift it all into what we call IL4, IL5 cloud environments. That was our prime opportunity to say, what types of data do we have on NIPRNet? Start to isolate those into data types, not data types, but that's kind of lack of a better word, kind of put them in the same families, and then port them into cloud in a conducive and protected environment equivalent for that data. And so we missed that boat. Now we're taking SIPRnet data and taking it and putting it into a secret fabric, which is even more extensive than the SIPRnet itself, because there are many players there. So that was an opportune time. I don't know if it's too late, but we got to know our data. We got to tag it appropriately and make sure it's in the place that is best suited to protect and defend it.
Well, yeah, two things there, right? One, you said we have a DoD CDO. I don't think we do we? I mean, David Spock left. Who replaced? I mean, we have an acting, I guess, but did someone else get appointed that I don't know about?
No, not yet. I deal with most of the team, and I know
Right,
they're still
right.
working
But
the
I mean, the
AI
actual
ML, the Jake.
CDO, obviously, it's part of the CDAO now with Craig Maltel. But the CDO, I think, is the acting is the former deputy, but I guess they have still not appointed. And David left quite a little while. David was great, by the way, great guy, and he left a long, probably almost a year ago. So that's not, I've not been replaced, no CSO. At least they replaced Jason Weiss with Rob Wittmeyer, which by the way was my recommendation for the Air Force. And then the next day that he was appointed to DoD, the Air Force called John Sherman to ask, oh, you stole my guy. No, you didn't steal the guy. You had a year to hire him, and you did nothing. And then you wonder why people are just not going to keep waiting. And so that's the other piece of the problem, right? People are just expecting people to just wait forever for a job that's never going to come.
Yeah,
It's
you
just
got to take
completely
care of your
mind-boggling
good
to me.
people.
The other question I had for you, I guess, is the impact level 4 versus 5. My take is we should merge it and just have one. The difference is negligible. Most people don't really understand it anyways. It's already hard enough. We have already enough. We could have L2, L5, and then L6, and create an L7 to have a top secret thing. But what's your take on the impact levels?
Absolutely. The clouds have already, there's really no delineation from the cloud service providers. The backplane is the same. It's really up to us on how we compartment or containerize the data once we get into cloud. And so there are certain access controls and environments that regions that we have to function in that delineate CUI and national security information. But it's
All right.
really, really hard when we don't data tag and we don't
We don't have the
make that.
tagging. People don't even know the difference, right?
Right.
So then, is it really? I mean, I get the concept of it, but it doesn't happen. So then
No,
you just create a
and
bunch of headaches,
right, and I'm
right?
of the opinion when we go to cloud, if it's unclassified and we need to protect it beyond what's publicly releasable, do
Right.
it. And
Exactly.
it's a fabric. It's an unclassified fabric that supports PII, CUI, and NSI. And I think there are others that are on that bandwagon. And if you really
Yeah.
care about your national security information and it's unclassified, then you have means and mechanisms to protect it within that cloud environment. You know,
Mm.
Mitch Komaroff used to ask me, Robby, do we have a means of defining and securing containers? And this was before you were even there. So I'm like, sir, that's the way to go. That to me is the Kevlar principle. You care about the chili recipe, put it in a container and harden it that it prevents and defends that chili recipe, right? And so
Right.
we have that opportunity. The clouds support it. And then now when you get into secret, we definitely need to have some rails, right? We need some different access and
Right.
parameters of protecting that data. And so, but it's still a secret fabric, and you have to be able to work secret with your Five Eye partners, your industry partners, the intelligence community, and DoD. So stop thinking I got to lift and shift SIPRNet.
Right.
Let's lift it. Let's put it adequately in protected areas within the secret fabric, and not try to carve out. You know, this
Exactly.
is DoD secret, uh, different from IC secret. It's really affecting our industry partners in their ability to collaborate with the DIB and deliver in a classified area. TS is we're getting there. Of course, the intelligence community is there. It's a smaller problem to tackle. And I think we are approaching that more of a TS fabric
Right.
because it's such a small subset of classified. So
Right. Yeah. The real important stuff is a SecRel environment for the mission partners. I think that's the one that
yeah, and the
we need to
SAPs, you
step
know,
up
we
the
need to
game.
find a home for the special access programs. Of
Oh yeah,
course.
SAP is just the whole mind-boggling
Oh
nonsense.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, it's just it's almost like we wanted to create another set of classifications because we want it to be extra special. It's just like then there's going to be a SAP of SAP or something. There's going to be another, who knows? Someone always wants to be special.
yes.
So I guess switching gear a little bit and talk about one of the benefit, of course, of working with the government is the government is really not too impacted by, in fact, not impacted at all because we just print the money and just but
Monopoly
but
money.
what right, they don't in fact I argue with a lot of companies that I'm helping and trying to convince them to do work with DoD because we need the best of breed in the department. I tell them, hey, your banking and telco customers are going to struggle and cut budget, and if you're not a must-have, you're gonna be out of the door as a company. But if you get in the government, you're gonna be there to stay, and it's gonna be a great crutch in this economy. Do you see, I guess, any challenges with the current economy?
Yeah, I have dealt with supply chain for a long time, and we've seen the issues associated with. But the more software, the more agile we are, the speed of relevance that we try to achieve, really assessing the risk of the supply chain. You know, who's creating the bolt that goes in the plane, and
Right.
how do we care about all those pieces? I think that risk is going to only increase, and we need to focus in that supply chain area. Supply
And
chain
the
is
chips, right?
under, yeah, it's under less U.S. Government control. Software, there's more of it. Cloud risk management is more diverse, and
Right.
so I see that you'll see a lot more energy that affects our economy. You know, when you see thousands of connexes stacked at the ports in Los Angeles and Charleston, with things that are necessary, essential components of something somewhere are not getting there. Why? And there are reasons, but I see supply chain as one. Global dominance. We talked about that a little bit. You know, having the rivalry. Competition. China. You know, I lived in China for 6 months. I watched their staff have to go be debriefed every day, if not two or three
Mm.
times a day, on everything they observed and heard. They're low and slow. I lived in Russia. That is more of a communist, definitely, but they're more mafia. They're wide open and gangstas, right? So
Right.
we still have these threats and challenges against us. And I don't know, and I know you're very passionate about it. If people really understand that they don't like us and they're going to try to steal
Right.
and gain global dominance. I know our taxpayers don't really get to understand and feel the essence of that threat. They're looking at who's coming across the border and sanctuary cities, and there may be talent coming from those areas. They're in
Right.
favor of U.S., right? Versus these countries that do want nothing for us but harm, to
Right.
pull
Right.
the
No
rug
doubt.
out from under us.
So as a company, though, you don't really. I mean, we talk about obviously supply chain and the chips and other stuff could be a problem, but that's not really just the economy. That's kind of broader supply chain issues and the dependency we created on Taiwan and China, which is despicable. I mean, it's not worse, I guess, than having to rely on device space systems to send people to the ISS. So I guess that's what it is. Thank God for SpaceX, which NASA used to make fun of when they announced they were going to do a reusable rocket. Now they're pretty happy about it, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So it's back to the government stuck in time, closed mentality there. But you don't see, obviously the government is not slowing down. In fact, the budgets are increasing. So you would say for companies, right, to diversify their portfolio if they do a lot on the commercial side, going into the government is probably a small thing to do right now.
Absolutely. As a woman-owned small business, Bill and I spun the company up when it was through the pandemic. We were a training company. We had to basically dissolve that business and rethink how we deliver training. But that allowed us to diversify our portfolio. If you look into SASSI, we also support our working canine, domestic and overseas, to provide them the health care they need.
Mm,
And so I have to balance that. And even in the contractual base, I have to work with the bigs, and it takes relationships and unique technology, so disruptive technologies, to get in as a sole source or
yeah.
be awarded a prime as a small business. And so I'm challenged there, but relationships have significantly helped. What also I want to bring awareness to is the pandemic drove remote work, but I'm
Yeah.
fascinated at how much and how effective we can be, and how I'm creating jobs in cloud where I don't care where you live or where you're working, as long as
Right.
you have internet and you can get the job done. I think the challenge is collaboration, and
Yeah.
there are only certain people that work well remotely, as coders and scripters. Their heads down, they love the autonomy, right? They want to be able to dig in. But there are others that are challenged by it. But I think it in the long run, it really gives us a diversity that allows folks to drive less, put their lives at risk less by traveling, burdening the roads and cars and gas, with prices. But if we can embrace more remote work and make it a part of our lives that is incredibly productive and effective, I would like to continue to push for that.
Yeah,
There's a
they
reason
should
to
go,
come
by
to
the
your
way, on our Cloud Native town gather chat. It's free. Anyone can go. It creates kind of this virtual. We find people that are remote. They can build a room and have interactions there. They does video chat, right? They can walk in. They can build a desk. So then they know when they're working at the desk and then when they have to go to a meeting on engagement. So it just creates this kind of mimicking the office, right, with a
Mhm.
coffee machine and people love it. So, people that have not tried it, go on the cloud native town and it's completely free. We're not charging for it. And you can have your employees if they want to get a dedicated space here, we can do that. And we have different themes, right? Kubernetes, cloud, DevSecOps, Zero Trust, and these other companies too, so they can share or they can have just a dedicated space for the company and not. So we have a lot of CNCF companies there pushing their content releases, what they're working on. So check it out.
Yeah, we definitely, our DCO team, they chat with the folks over at Cloud One and Platform One still to this day.
Yeah,
We really embrace that and love it.
yeah. So now, obviously, the elephant in the room, right? Not enough women on this show. It's not that I'm not trying. It's just what it is. I'm not specifically, I don't really care about gender, so I don't really think about it. I care about what the person is going to say, and if that person is going to bring fun and good small content to the audience. So I don't really go out of my way, to say I'm going to do diversity stuff. Um, but I obviously care that we have more women. I have three girls, so I care. And obviously, you've been through all these jobs, right? And honestly, some of them are designed for initially for men. That's what it is, right? And now, that's changing a little bit. It's not perfect, but it's changed. What would you tell my girls, assuming they're 4-year-old now, so let's assume they're a little bit older, but what would you tell my girls on how difficult it is first in IT, and then in the kind of government DoD landscape, because that's two different universes there.
Absolutely. I would say, instilling confidence in anything they learn, they know, they're strong in, to hold steadfast to that confidence, and don't let anyone bring you down, and get behind those that support you to even increase your confidence level. In IT, it has always been male dominated. In my journey, I had some really awesome male leaders who recognized me for what I brought to the table. And it all started when I was, a gun toter. I could shoot better, I could run faster, I could kick the crap out of somebody better than some guys, right? And so I had to physically prove myself. In IT, it's a little difficult. You still have to prove yourself. But there was a point in time where I was government, and I was about achieving and progressing, and I had to make the decisions and get the money and the funding, and gain the support behind what I was trying to do. And then, coming into DoD, extremely male dominated. Everybody I supported was male for the early years. I was then put in a position to let it be your idea, sir. I'm here to, influence and advise you. And you could care less. I could care less if you use my name or recognize that I afforded that knowledge to you, and helped you with that decision. But you get the credit. It was your idea. And then over time, they respected me and elevated me to be that trusted advisor. And, you just kind of gain that confidence and continue to deliver it. So I say confidence, uh, relationships is huge. Being responsive. I teach my folks, mentor them to keep a zero inbox on every email account I have. You need to engage people. You need to let them know you hear them. And so that's a big part of my success and my strength, is engaging and creating and sustaining strong relationships with people who do lift you up, people who do support what you're trying to achieve,
Yeah, there's so
and get
many
those little
options,
girls into coding.
right? And there's so many options now that you want to focus where you see the right environment for success, right? You can pick and choose now. It didn't always used to be the case,
Good
but
point.
at least right now it's an environment where employees and talent is so rare that you get to pick, and it shouldn't just be about money, right? It should be about are you going to enjoy it, the work environment, and things like that. um, Last question for you before we let you go. And by the way, I will tell people after this question, I will tell people about the next episode, and then you'll be doing the parting words to say goodbye. What keeps you up at night?
What I've mentioned all along is the energy behind me to staff, resource, and deliver what I know will position DoD and other U.S. government organizations for improved cyber defense through crowdsourcing, peer engineering, centralizing the best developers, the zero client to cloud, the CNAPs, the DCO in the cloud. I think are things we must do. How do we get the power behind it? That keeps me up at night. I don't want to lose the thread on this one.
Right.
Also, the continued waste of dollars on endpoint security. 18 years, Nick. It's
Yeah.
time to stare at the pen and rethink how we address to get to a better life, less patching, put it on the vendor. So I think those are the two big things I would point out that kind of relevant to our discussion today that keep me up at night.
Yeah, that's all very critical stuff. Hopefully, people are listening and taking action, and they know who to talk to if they want the answer. So you're right here to help, and you've done a great job doing that for us. So I wanted to thank you, of course, for all your years of service. You've done more than probably most people I know. So thank you. With that, next week we're gonna have a great guest on Tuesday, 1 p.m. Richard Bird is joining us. Is a CSO, Chief Security Officer for Traceable AI. And we'll talk about API security, which, API is still nascent, funny enough, in DoD. It should be much bigger than it is, but it's not. It's growing pretty fast, but, still kind of a new thing. And unfortunately, cyber is still a forgotten thing when it comes to API. So he's going to show up and talk about, how do we manage identities? How do we continuously monitor APIs? And other things to pay attention to when it comes to API security. So it's going to be an interesting episode. He's coming from a wealth of background between JP Morgan and other organizations as a CSO. So it's going to be great. So it's going to be next Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern for everybody. With that, over to you for the closing thoughts.
Thank you so much, Nick. It's always great to engage you. Thank you for this opportunity to share my passion. I am passionate. Everyone that knows me, I do sleep on these things, and I continue to try to progress. And it's partners like you that allow me to continue to have the passion and the support. I look forward to continuing to work with you, Nick. So again, I love what you're doing. Keep doing it. Everyone who's not on here, we need to recruit more people to engage and learn and get behind us in this momentum of cybersecurity. So thank you so much, Nick. Great to see you.
Thanks, everybody. You stay safe, and we'll see you next Tuesday. In the meantime, keep up the good fight so our kids have a fighting chance at winning against China 20 years from now. Stay safe, everybody. Thank you.